No services for 30 miles. Mr. Exit? Well, it's going to be a while. You can't get back there from here. Now, usually when you're on an interstate or other freeway in America, you can expect exits every few miles, where you can stop for gas or food or even turn around if you missed your exit. But in some places, you might go several miles without a chance to leave the freeway and get stuck committing to 20, 30, or even 40 miles of travel before you can leave the roadway. These lonely stretches of highway are where drivers need to be careful that their gas is topped off and that they're on the right path, or else it could be a long day. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the 14 longest gaps between exits on American freeways. Now, most of these will be interstate highways, but any freeway qualifies for the list. And when you think of lonely roads and no services, most people think of the vast open areas of the American West. But there are actually quite a few of these on the East Coast as well. Like the video, subscribe if you love the content, and let's get into the list. Number 14 to kick off the list is on I-80, I-90, the Indiana Turnpike between exit 144, I-69, and exit 121 for Indiana 9 to Howey and LaGrange. The distance between exits here is 23.8 miles. This is a pretty rural stretch of 4-lane highway and carries both I-80 and I-90 on a long concurrency. It's not too lonely though. There is a service plaza between the exits with gas and snacks for exhausted drivers. One interesting note is how Indiana doesn't list Sturgis, Michigan for exit 121 at all, despite it actually being the closest and largest city to the exit. You can't say Indiana doesn't favor the home team with their signage up here. At number 13 is I-76, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The section in question is between exit 226 in Carlisle to exit 201 in Blue Mountain for a total of 25 miles. Now, the Pennsylvania Turnpike, like many other turnpikes, is known for having less exit points than your typical free interstate highway. Usually, turnpikes reserve interchanges for crossings with major roadways. Carlisle and Chambersburg are listed as control cities. At exit 228, you can find a Lowe's travel stop, several hotels, as well as access to Carlisle itself via US 11. Despite the gap, there is a Blue Mountain Service Plaza near exit 201 with gas, food, and other services for westbound drivers, while eastbound drivers have a service plaza at Plainfield before reaching Carlisle. Number 12 is down in Florida, and it is I-75 southbound through the Everglades, also known as Alligator Alley. The gap here is from exit 49, which is State Road 84, to exit 23, or US 27, for a total of 25.7 miles. This section of roadway is very lonely. It is extremely flat through swampland with a high speed limit of 75 miles per hour, even though most drivers when I was there were usually in that 85 to 90 mile per hour range. If you're headed southbound, then the exit for US 27 is a sign of relief as you're exiting the Everglades and entering the Miami South Florida metropolis. You'll see Miami and South Bay as control cities. At exit 49, you'll see Snake Road as the control city, as there really isn't any city or anything out here. And there is a small service plaza off this exit, so you don't feel too lonely. But me personally, I've always just driven clear across Alligator Alley without stopping. But you guys can feel free to stop and smell the trees if you like. Number 11 is simply the reverse direction of number 12's I-75 in South Florida. This one is Alligator Alley northbound from exit 23 to 49. Now this one is 26.2 miles, and the control cities are the same as the southbound direction. The biggest difference with this direction is that you're just getting started on your Everglades journey, and you have a long way to reach civilization again. So that service plaza on exit 49 might actually be a welcome place to take a break. For number 10, we head over to Oklahoma, where we have I-44, the H.E. Bailey Turnpike. Here the gap is from exit 53, US 277, to exit 80, US 277 again, along with US 81, for a total of 27.6 miles. This is a desolate stretch of roadway that I drove myself back in the summer of 2023. Exit 53 provides access to Elgin, while exit 80 to Chicasa. There actually is an exit for Country Road 2700 in the westbound direction, so this one is eastbound only. Fortunately, the speed limit is a very generous 80 miles per hour out here. This stretch has 0 services, so you're on your own for a while before you get a chance to take a break. And while there are no service plazas, there is indeed a toll plaza, because Tullahoma makes sure to collect. Enjoy. Number 9 is in what seems to be everyone's favorite state these days, California. The gap here is on I-40 between exit 78 for Kelso and exit 50 for Ludlow for about 28.4 miles. This gap is the same mileage in both directions here. This is a desolate stretch of freeway through the Mojave Desert, where I-40 replaced the old Route 66. I'm actually quite familiar with Kelso and the other so-called towns in this area, as we used to drive through here during my time in the Marine Corps to get from 29 Palms to Las Vegas. I can assure you that the towns listed as control cities at most consist of just a couple of buildings, and cellular service is absent. But this was a pretty good area to test the top speed of your car. If you head south, you can see the abandoned town of Amboy nearby. The Ludlow exit does have some services right off the interstate, but outside of that, you'll have to wait until you get to Needles before you see civilization again. Number 8 is back in Oklahoma on I-44 again, but this time it's on the Will Rogers Turnpike portion of the interstate in the westbound direction. It is between exit 283 for US 69 and exit 255 for Will Rogers Boulevard for a total of 28.4 miles. Northeastern Oklahoma is surprisingly desolate. When you enter the state from Joplin, you won't see much of anything from the interstate until you reach Tulsa. Exit 283 has a Love's and a hotel right off the exit, while exit 255 provides access to the town of Claremore. One thing you'll notice about these northeastern Oklahoma towns is that you really can't access them without the toll roads. Well, technically you can, but turning on the avoid tolls option in this area will cost you a lot of time. And you'll also find old school cash toll booths in places like Miami. There is an exit between here and the eastbound direction, so this one is westbound only. Number 7 is in a place you probably would not have expected, on the East Coast, the state of Massachusetts. This one is on Interstate 90, the Massachusetts Turnpike between exit 3 for Westfield and exit 2 for Lee, which comes in at about 29.9 miles. As we're starting to see here, turnpikes are dominating the list. Westfield is a developed western suburb of Springfield, while Lee is a smaller town near the New York state line. Unlike most of the other spots on this list, both of these exits take you to well-developed modern amenities. The exit for Lee even has a large shopping outlet nearby. US 20 does cross the turnpike a couple times between these exits, but it does not have an actual interchange with it. This one doesn't have any services between exits, so you're on your own if you get stuck out here. At number 6 is Interstate 335 in Kansas between exit 147 for US 56 and exit 177 for I-470 at 30.3 miles. This one goes in both the north and southbound directions. Along this route, you'll get to see 30 miles of the exciting plains of the Kansas countryside. There are no ways off the highway, and there are no service plazas along this stretch. At I-470, you'll see Topeka and Salina for the westbound direction, and Kansas City headed east. While at US 56, you'll see signage for Council Grove and Osage City. Number 5 brings us back to Florida and onto the same route, which is I-75 Alligator Alley through the Everglades. This time it is exit 80 at Florida 29 and the previous junction of Snake Road at exit 49. The distance between exits here is 30.6 miles in both directions. Now, even though there are no actual exits between these two locations, there are some interesting things you'll find along this stretch. First, there's an unnumbered exit northbound for a recreation area out here. It appears to be a parking lot with a boat ramp and an unpaved road through the Everglades. Then there's a Collier County rest area and fire station as you continue northbound on I-75. And continuing north, there is yet another unnumbered side exit for another recreation area. This one is for the Big Cypress National Preserve. And then finally, at exit 80, we have our official exit with signage for the Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park, utilizing Florida 28. Number 4 is back in Pennsylvania on the Turnpike again. This time it is both directions between exit 110 in Somerset and exit 146 in Bedford. Now, this is an interesting stretch of highway in the sense that though there are no official exits, there are quite a few unofficial ways to get off the turnpike. Heading westbound, we can see the first here can be used to get onto Country Ridge Road. Then yet another of these types of exits can be found at Shawnee Road. Then here's one at Fall Pale Road and also one at Cider Road. And additionally, there's an access ramp here in New Baltimore and at Brotherton Road. Also of note is the Allegheny Mountain Tunnel, which Pennsylvania wants to eventually modernize or bypass with the new tunnel altogether. And then finally, there's a service plaza for both sides right outside of Somerset where you can get food and gas, followed by exit 110 into Somerset. The third place spot belongs to Interstate 80 in the state of Utah. The gap is between exit 4 for Bonneville Speedway Road and exit 41 for Knowles. At exit 4, one could travel up to the Bonneville Speedway, where many a race has occurred on the salt flats in the area. The desolate stretch between these two exits is defined by the Great Salt Lake Desert. Along the way, there's a rest area and an interesting site called the Tree of Utah. Once you finally reach exit 41, it is signed with the control city of Knowles. which do not be fooled. There is no actual town down here. Knowles is an unincorporated place that has been abandoned for over 30 years. So this exit is more so if you want to see more of the Great Salt Lake Desert along the path of the old US 40 that used to follow through here before it was decommissioned. If you continue eastbound along I-80 from here, you will mainly find desert for another hour or so driving before finally coming to civilization again in Salt Lake City. And the runner-up as we approach the top of the list is yet another one in Florida. Number 2 is Florida's Turnpike between exit 193 for Yeehaw Junction and exit 152 for Fort Pierce. This stretch without an exit goes on for 40.5 miles. If you're heading northbound, then right before exit 152, you have a large service plaza that has everything you could need. It was so busy when I went through there that it was difficult to even find parking. So stock up while you can, because after you pass exit 152, you will see nothing but grass and trees for the next 40 miles as you traverse through rural Central Florida. Now, when you finally get to Yeehaw Junction, it is indeed just that, a junction with Florida 60 in the middle of nowhere. But there is a pilot travel center to stop at and take a break should you choose. And don't think you're in the clear just yet, though, at the number 1 slot awaits right after Yeehaw Junction. Which brings us to the number 1 spot. Not in Nevada, not Utah, not Idaho, and not in Wyoming, but rather a stretch of highway also in Florida. Continuing where we left off at number 2 is Florida's Turnpike from exit 193, Yeehaw Junction, to exit 242 for US 192 to Kissimmee and St. Cloud. At a whopping 48.9 miles, this is the longest stretch of freeway in the United States without an exit. Before embarking on this journey, you better have everything you need. And be sure that you've committed to this drive, because it's a heck of a drive before you'll be able to turn around. Despite how populated Florida has become and how fast it continues to grow, this stretch of highway will remind you that the state still has large areas of untouched rural character. There is absolutely nothing out here that you'll see from the highway except grass and trees. The official speed limit is 75 miles per hour, but it is merely a suggestion in these parts. Fortunately, there is a service plaza along the route, and even though you can't actually exit the roadway, you can, however, use that service plaza to turn around if necessary. And through all the woods, eventually, you start to see a bit of suburban sprawl in the distance from the ever-expanding Orlando metro area. And when you finally see that sign for US 192 to Kissimmee, you can rest easy, because you are now re-entering civilization. Shortly after this, the roadway opens up as the turnpike heads into Orlando proper. And there you have it, guys, the longest stretches of highway in America without any exits. Were you surprised by the states that these highways were in? Is there a place that you were expecting to make the list but didn't? Are there any other long stretches of highway with no exits that you're aware of? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.